Stage 5, Stage 6 load shedding. Transnet now has over 100,000 containers stuck off the coast because it cannot unload them. And business and government had another big meeting yesterday to try and resolve some of these problems. As you know, business has been working with government with certain critical plans, particularly around issues around infrastructure. But last week, the Presidency Minister, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, claimed the fact some banks were involved in the manipulation of the rand on international markets before 2013 showed the private sector wanted government to collapse. Martin Kingston is the chair of Business for South Africa. Martin, good afternoon to you. Let's start with the controversy, shall we? So we saw the minister's comments last week. She said yesterday she was standing by them. Did her comments affect yesterday's meeting? Was she in the meeting?
She was in the meeting, and I have to say it was raised by the President at the very outset of the meeting, Stephen, in a very constructive way. We all agreed that it didn't represent or reflect in any way the work that we are doing, or indeed the relationship between business and government. The President committed himself again, and indeed the government, to the partnership, as did we. I believe that the Minister's comments were specifically directed towards the Competition Commission settlement by Standard Chartered Bank, and has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on the work that we're doing. In fact, far from that, what we discussed at the meeting with the President was the resources, in fact, the additional resources, skills and expertise that business is committing to work in the three areas that, as you know, we've identified of energy, transportation and logistics, and crime and corruption. And I don't believe that, other than acknowledging that it was an unfortunate statement that was made last week, it will have no bearing whatsoever, as I said, on the quality and the nature of the partnership.
Okay, so everyone's still working together. From what you say, everyone is still friends. There's so many issues at the moment. I mean, on electricity and Eskom, do you believe you're actually making any progress with government? Do you believe that we're going to see some improvement there? We're on Stage 6 again tonight, as you know.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Stephen. And of course, when we're at Stage 6, or when we see, as you said, 100,000 containers on the high seas not able to be unloaded, that of course focuses the mind and it crystallizes the challenges that we've got. What I would like to say is that the most important issue for us initially, and we had our first meeting with the President on the 6th of June of this year, was to establish the structures, the systems, to resource them properly, to put in place appropriate governance, to commit ourselves to transparency on the work that was being done, and to ensure that we'd identified a limited number of interventions in the three areas concerned, where we could actually redouble our efforts as a country, government and business, plus other stakeholders where appropriate, to start to move the needle. And much of the first 2 or 3 months was spent doing that work, and it's beginning to pay real dividends because we've got traction in terms of the working relationship. We understand what the challenges and the issues are, but I don't think that we should be under any illusion as to the size and scale of the problem, or indeed the nature of the headwinds that we're facing. It's not as though the load shedding was something that arose in the last few months. It's been building up over several years, as we all acknowledge. And similarly, the challenges with Transnet are as a result of fundamental underinvestment, failing to maintain equipment, not having the right management. Again, that's a historic legacy for which we're now paying the price. And mobilizing the right expertise, making sure that we're focused on key deliverables, which is what we actually did with the President yesterday, where we work through what needs to be done by what time frame, what are the key priority actions, be it in energy, for example, fast-tracking the ERA bill, which will open up the sector for real competition and participation. In the case of transport and logistics, the Cabinet adopting the freight logistics roadmap and making sure that that is aligned to a turnaround strategy or recovery plan at Transnet, putting in place appropriate systems and processes within the crime and corruption focus area. All of those were where we actually spent most of our time yesterday, engaging on the work that had been done by joint teams. And I should say these presentations are not done by business or by government. They are joint presentations by business and government to the President, to relevant ministers, to the heads of departments, and indeed to the leaders of the business streams that are responsible for mobilizing resources from the private sector to work alongside government.
So there seems to be almost contradictory reports about what's happening with the load shedding, for example, Martin. I mean, the electricity minister said load shedding should be getting better. Eskom's forecast quite intense load shedding for the next few months. Do you actually believe it's going to get any better? I think people are getting very cynical about this.
Well, load shedding can only get better once, A, we improve the existing operations, the existing power stations, and we are deploying technical resources from business. We need to be very careful that we have the right roles and responsibilities identified. The second is to bring new capacity onto the system. New capacity obviously means that we need to fast-track bid windows. The ability to do that has been constrained by not having adequate transmission capability, as we know. So that's also been identified in terms of grid access rules and a wheeling framework to be put in place. And as I said, an overall enabling legislation in the form of the ERA bill. So all of those four are moving ahead together. Realistically, and I fully agree with you that the government needs to speak with a sort of single voice in terms of an aligned position on how long it's going to take. We're clear that the only realistic target date was the end of 2024, and actually we may be slipping in terms of that because we haven't delivered as quickly as we should. And in the interim, particularly when we suffer the sort of weather conditions that we're suffering currently, we're going to see more and ongoing load shedding, and I think we should be under no illusion that that will carry on, certainly for the next 12 or 15 months.
Martin, you have been, as Business for SA, quite critical of the NHI. It's going through the National Council of Provinces. It's due to go through it as we speak. You've made the point that, in fact, none of the proposals have led to any changes to the draft bill that will be voted on today. Just in the last 2 minutes, we've had confirmation, in fact, the Democratic Alliance caucus in the National Council of Provinces has been ordered to leave the House, so it looks like the vote will then go ahead without them, if I understand the procedure correctly. Are you worried about how this bill is being going through the NCOP, about whether it's entirely democratic to go through in this way?
Well, we actually raised the NHI issue with the President. It wasn't the main focus of attention, but he has discussed it with us previously. We have communicated our concerns to him as well as to relevant ministers, let alone, of course, the responsible minister, the Minister of Health. My understanding, actually, is that the vote on the bill has been deferred for a week until the 6th of December. As you know, we have asked to engage very explicitly both with the NCOP. We've written to the chair of the NCOP. We've written to the Deputy President as the leader of government business, because we feel that what has happened thus far is unprocedural. It doesn't represent due process. And Stephen, you're right. It's not just that our comments haven't been taken into consideration. No comments have been taken into consideration. And we're deeply concerned that as currently structured, the bill is unimplementable. It's not that we're not supportive of aspiring to universal health care to be implemented as quickly and as feasibly as possible. We don't think that the current version enables that to happen, and we've made recommendations and suggestions which thus far have not been incorporated. Let us see what happens in the coming week, if indeed it has been deferred until the 6th of December.
Martin Kingston, thank you. Chair of Business for South Africa. Do appreciate it. The breaking news, of course, on your screen as well. The DA caucus order to leave the National Council of Provinces. Our team monitoring that story for you. More on that developing story to come. More on the situation in the Middle East as well.